Guys, what is going on? RedMaster here, and welcome back to the edition of Cars TV Commentary, at least Cars and Castles Cars TV Commentary. We've got some good matches lined up for you, or at least lined up for us today, so hopefully you guys do enjoy them. I don't want to kind of, linger too much on the intro. We can get straight into the matches. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into match number 1. Alright, so our first match is going to be Icebergsz taking on Lord Sberty. Now, pretty much you can already tell Warlock Crusader, they did get quite the bump in power recently. Pretty much all Crusader decks did kind of, thanks to the Priest modification. Him being kind of reworked now into a more solid 2 gold unit. Really diversifies that early game just a bit further with his addition. But again, you can see Sberty pretty much running the standard Last Will stuff. Rider, Banshee, Lumberjack. Which makes sense. They are certainly still viable. Still very much in top tier contention. And of course, Blue Firebolt being in his hand as well. No surprise there. You could slightly theorize that yes, we might see more of these now, regardless of if it's the Last Will deck or not, thanks to the nerf in Flame Cannon. But we'll see if it gets useful as the match goes on here. So, of course, Icebergsz not able to start off with anything, which is fine. Sberty going to go ahead, chop down with Lumberjack, and do a little Salahar Rider action to follow suit. So, pretty standard opening stuff here. Hopefully, Icebergsz can capitalize on it. Unfortunately, he isn't able to, so does leave him in a bit of a tricky position early on, but nothing that he can't really come back from. What's important, though, is that he is running Ninja Viking, so all the damage he takes, he can't really bring that back. So he does have to be careful about how much early damage he takes here in these opening moments. So, of course, Lumberjack and Salahar Rider going to chop down another 3 off of his castle, and, of course, Sberty following up with a Banshee, figuring Lumberjack is probably too weak, and he can capitalize on this lack of play from Icebergsz with something that's maybe a little more hard-hitting in the form of Banshee. Sure, Lumberjack could have gotten in more draw, but again, you want to do more damage to a castle, especially since they can't get that damage back if they're not running Crusader. So anyway, finally, Icebergsz is going to play a card here. We see Hassan City Guard here, and we see Alpha Strike followed up with on the, or at least one of the guards, the one hitting Salahar Rider. Now, I do slightly understand where this play is coming from. You don't want to have the guards trade with the rider, thereby also dealing more castle damage or hitting the other guard. So it does leave you the other unit to work with. So the idea here is that hopefully Salahar Rider's Last Will damage does hit castle, leaving both units alive. Although Alpha Strike is a heavy kind of price to pay for that. Again, I understand the sort of reasoning behind it, but do I agree with it? Not really. That's a different story. But anyway, here, Sberty's going to continue on the assault, or at least we'll let the damage go through. We can see he's back to his turn now. Icebergsz did lose that top guard due to the rider damage. Not, I think, the target he was looking for. I think he was okay with taking a little more face damage. But again, he's going to take 3 more thanks to this Banshee, I believe. If I'm correct about that. Yes, I am. Beautiful. So now the game is set to 20-13. And again, we're going to see Banshee, and I believe the Lumberjack come out as well here. So again, continuing the beatdown-like mentality here. Ninja Vikings don't really have a lot of, at least they're not known for their hard-hitting early offense, which when you have a deck based around these smaller units that, need to die, things like Banshee, Rider, Lumberjack, it is a bit difficult to kind of come back from that, or at least difficult to counter that, I guess, when you have a deck full of that early aggression versus a deck that doesn't really pride itself on that. So, again, 2 different mentalities kind of clashing there, but we'll see how things go. Ludicrous Strength from Icebergsz here, so again, trading with the Banshee, or at least keeping his guard alive, so hopefully he's thinking that he can get maybe more value out of this guard by keeping it alive that much longer. Ludicrous Strength, though, a heavy price to pay for that play. He didn't get a useful spell, or didn't get a useful spell. Rite of Awakening, there isn't really a lot going on in Warlock Crusader Last Will to warrant a Rite of Awakening. Maybe a Knight of Flowers. If he's got it, I doubt, though, that he might use it, though. But now we see Priest in his hand as well. Again, the reworked Priest anyway, definitely a solid unit to kind of throw in there. And we'll see his sort of use later on. He will come into play, and I'll take a moment to kind of talk about it there. But anyway, continuing the matchup. Another 3-2 Icebergsz face, so now we're getting a bit dangerous here. Icebergsz has pretty much lost half of his castle health, so he's really got to be cautious about how much damage he's taking. And to add insult to injury, he's going to throw the or at least Sberty's going to throw out the Tarius as well to get more cards in his hand, because that's what he wants to do. He wants to continue the beatdown, and what better way than, of course, continually having this supply of cards to use it. Surprisingly, he didn't move the Lumberjack forward. I don't know if that was just a misplay or just intentional. I probably would have moved it up at least one space, and maybe I can understand the mentality of you want to kind of save your last will, because he has thrown a lot of last will on the board, and he does maybe want to save a little bit for if he pulls an Andrew. So I kind of understand if that's where he was going for, but again, if draw is his focus, he might want to move that Lumberjack up one. Although we'll see if we'll see what happens from Icebergsz here. So Icebergsz does trade the guard into the Banshee, so that kind of tells you right now that his hand must not be looking too strong in terms of units here, considering that he could have just had another unit come out, at least a weaker one, and take that down, meanwhile protecting the guard a bit further. Meanwhile, Icebergsz has a trap, and that's pretty much his turn, so definitely in trouble here. Now we're moving into the mid-game here, and we do see Sberty's hand looking quite nice. Couple burns like Dragon's Fire, Blue Firebolt, some utility like Fear and Infiltrate maybe, Priest as well. Just he's got a lot of options here. But moving forward, Sberty's going to play Infiltrate on the Tarius, throw the Dwarven Miner out as well, or Dwarf Miner that he just drew, and the Priest. So now, just take a moment here to kind of understand. For those of you who haven't really seen the Priest in action yet, it's a good point to kind of show you why Priest is at the level it's at right now. So we have a pretty standard board right now. So you got Dwarven Miner, Tarius, Lumberjack, the Castle, all at their standard levels of health here. But when the moment Priest goes down here, boom! Look at that. Everything just got the +1 added in terms of health. So Lumberjack, Miner, Tarius, they've all become slightly stronger now and slightly harder to kill. And on top of that, the castle does get a little bit of extra health as well, which is always nice to see. But it does bring up the fact that now you can use Priest to save yourself, or at least gain yourself maybe an extra turn in sudden death as well. So not just allied units, but the castle as well. So you kind of see or at least understand why Priest's ability is very sort of beneficial. We talk constantly on this channel, at least in this format, about the importance that stats play in this game, and the reason why Blacksmith, Armory, those cards are also prevalent. And when you add Priest's ability to add health on top of that, again, not really so much of a global buff here, but the mentality of this is a kind of temporary global buff, if you will, but still acts as one too, giving everything a buff in stats, which is great to see. But anyway, moving forward in the matchup here, we go back to Icebergsz for turn 6. Panda comes out. Now, this is kind of, again, another benefit to playing Priest here. The Priest gets bounced back into Sberty's hand, meaning Priest can now be used again. So, again, everything out here is going to get another +1 in health, which, again, another slight point I want to talk about here. If you're playing Ninjas against Crusaders now, you got to be careful where you play your Panda. I know Panda is sort of like another form of soft removal for a lot of Ninja decks here if they don't have the hard removal or the burns to go with it. So they act on Panda as sort of the removal option. But be careful now when you are, or at least when Priest is out on the field now, because bouncing Priest back just gives them another +1 to their health, which is something that you don't want to do. So just something to kind of take note of here. And again, just the power behind Priest, you don't want it to kind of resummon itself, because now everything again gets that +1, and now we're looking at a Tarius with 5 health, a Miner with 5 health, Lumberjack again 2 health, but the Castle with 22 health, and again we saw him use that burn to get rid of Panda. Honestly, he could have used Dwarven Miner there. I don't think it would have been too much of a loss here, but I understand maybe just kind of not necessarily, I guess, taking this match as much of a threat anymore. I'm not sure if that's the mentality that he's at. Rune Warrior comes out for 5 gold. Of course, Metal of Bravery gets another trap down on the board. So now Icebergsz got 2 traps out on the board. You got to imagine Secret Dragon or Aijitsu is definitely among them. Those are the 2 prevalent traps here. Avalanche could see play here, but I doubt it. I think if you're running traps in sort of a Viking Ninja setting, you're going to see Secret Dragon, you're going to see Aijitsu, something along those lines. We'll see how Lord Sberty handles things here. He's got Tarius, which I imagine will set off the traps. Yep, there we go. So both traps get activated, Secret Dragon being one of them. I guess Aijitsu the other. Yep. So, Yeah, a bit of a I don't know which trap went down first, if it was Icebergsz or Secret Dragon, but when you have Tarius, or at least any sort of range in it, and that's why I keep harping on the fact that traps aren't as, I guess, super powerful, or at least, considered powerful like they once were. They still definitely have their uses, but with range being a lot more prevalent in the game now, traps have a much more of a tendency to be easily diverted. The Eye Jitsu is essentially useless now, because you didn't get a melee unit with that. If the priest were to hit first, then yes, you could have gotten more value out of the Eye Jitsu, but now Eye Jitsu is pretty much worthless. The Dragon Trap, of course, still, has its uses. It's still pretty much, it keeps a stronger unit alive, or at least it keeps a unit alive, or at least creates this new threat on the board. But the Aijitsu is completely useless here. Now we can see it's already going to go ahead and fear that away. Gets another shot at the castle with Priest. Yep, there it is. And Priest, being a small unit, there's not much of a tendency to protect it. So, and again, 3 damage is not bad for it. He'll throw out Arcanon General and just use the Rite of Awakening, because I don't really think at that point, he doesn't really have a reason to hold on to it. It is clumping up space in his hand, so if he can use it, he can just go ahead and waste it, go ahead and throw it away. But now we see Icebergsz going to try and fight back here. Mordok comes out, hits the Priest, gets a Headless Horseman, kills off the Lumberjack, so General without a last will target to hit. Horseman doesn't really see much of a option here and goes ahead, smacks Tarius around a bit. But here we see I think, is this the... Yeah, okay, so this is I think, the game ender here. At least you can see how this is going to end. We'll see Tarius take one shot at the Faithful, or the Green Drake. I don't know why I said Faithful Drake. And now here we see Flamestorm taking into effect here. And again, some power behind these burns. You can see basically everything taking 2 damage. I don't know why this is kind of so hard for me to explain. Everything takes 2 damage on the board now. So Tarius dies. Mordok over here dies. Green Drake takes damage. Castle takes damage. But you can see a second Flamestorm hiding in Sberty's hand here, which will be the game ender. He does another Flamestorm, opens up the castle for his General. General comes in, smacks the castle, and ends the game. So, pretty much a clean win for Sberty here. There's not really much to say about this win moving forward. I kind of explained a lot, I think, in matchup here. Last Will, strong contention. Again, still, I don't think you can count Last Will as a deck that you shouldn't underestimate. I think that's... Well, maybe I said that wrong. Shouldn't underestimate Last Will is what I'm trying to say here. They are still pretty prevalent, still pretty top tier, in my opinion. Some people, again, when I did my tier list video, some people actually came up to me with their own tier lists and placed Last Will in the S tier. And I kind of understand that. A and S are very sort of close in the rankings there, so I can clearly see people taking the favor on Last Will. It's still a very hard-hitting deck, and even more so now that we've lost some of the... or at least now that some decks have fallen out of favor here. Last Will is still a very strong contender, but overall a very solid match from both of these players. But let's go ahead and move on to match number 2 now and see what lies in store. Alright, so next up we have Manny G11 taking on Changel. Changel. I apologize for the name butchers. I'm not very good with them, especially when we have some things like that. I'm going to stick to L for now. Hopefully that's not... offensive, taking on Manny G. We'll see how this goes. We see another We see another Crusader Warlock deck. This time a little bit more Knights thrown in here. I see Questing Knight. I see Drain Life, which is interesting. And again, Dragon Crest Shield, which, Last will tend to run that. But we also see Tarius Files, and maybe a combination of both. Not exactly sure. We'll see how the match moves forward. But Manny's starting off strong here, looking like he's running the Viking Pirate good stuff here. We see a Hovel with the help of the medallion. So a very early and aggressive placement of Hovel as well, which is interesting. We'll see how that pays off here. L, though, taking the initiative, summoning that Questing Knight here. We'll see how Manny responds. He will throw a Questing Knight of his own. I guess, which is fine with, something that I just kind of want to talk about here. People sometimes bring up the discussion of Questing Knight and Dwarven Miner here, if there's any sort of difference, or at least which one is better. Just kind of pointing this out now, or at least pointing this out. If you do plan on using, if you're just deciding whether or not Questing Knight or Dwarven Miner is right for you, honestly, at that point, it comes down to aesthetics. They both have pretty much the same basis. A 2 gold neutral unit has a 3/3 stat line, and it's just sort of an overall solid addition for your early game here. So, Question Knight and mine are interchangeable, but you guys already know that. I don't know why I'm kind of stopping to tell you now. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue on. We see a Flamestorm in L's hand. We'll see how he responds to this Question Knight. Well, okay, he'll simply trade, which is, I guess, fine. Looking at the Tarius files as well, I thought he probably would have gone for Dragon Crest Shield to force a lot of these guys to make more trades, but, you know, that's fine. If he, you know, more trades, more draw, right? I mean, he definitely didn't have anything else there. We see basically Manny running up his rats to end off his turn, which is interesting. If he did have another unit in there, you probably certainly would have thrown it for some extra aggression on the board here. But anyway, moving forward here, we'll see how L responds to these rats. He'll throw in the Guardian, of course, not dying thanks to the armor given to, or at least the 2 armor given to Guardian. And of course, neither of these rats can really trade with him, but a knockout coming out from Manny, taking out the Guardian, I believe. Yep, right away. So that's kind of interesting, using knockout to take out a Guardian when, I mean, you could have just ignored the Guardian. You know, keep your rats, you know, at least keep the rats, keep the pressure on. So yeah, I think that was a bit of an aggressive knockout. Maybe not a necessary one, but we'll see if it backfires later on in the match. Ella responding with a Knight of Flowers up top, so just kind of hoping that he can get this buff off to make it a little bit of a stronger knight here. Maybe do some work clearing out a lot of these rats here. We'll see how Manny responds. That's a Dagger Storm, so there goes a Knight of Flowers. All 3 bleeds, landing on a 2/3 Knight of Flowers. Plus Berserker to put the exclamation point on, if you will, to end the turn here. However, L's going to get a decent amount of Dragon's Fire value here. Takes out all of the, or at least most of the board here. It keeps the hovel alive, obviously, but pretty much clearing off all the units, which is, you know, you love to see it. You love to see it. Meanwhile, a rat from Manny, and a sniper to follow up with, plus a cultist, I guess, for good measure. So, I don't necessarily agree with this play here, and I'll tell you why. Now, obviously, we see the 2 Flamestorms in L's hand, but we just saw the Dragon's Fire out of L. I kind of get the, or at least I understand, playing both your range units now, you think that your opponent cast their mass burn out of cycle, so you're just thinking, oh, I can, of course, rush my my range units down there. When you're facing off against a Warlock Crusader, always try to keep a couple more options available to you. I understand if you want to play the sniper, you have the gold to get him out while the board is hot. But I would have held off on cultist personally, just because I know that there might have been some other burns here. Now, maybe he's thinking he has a couple blue firebolts. I mean, then that could be the case too here. But always hold back a couple options here. You don't want to overextend yourself, because that's how people end up losing most of the time. They'll extend their resources too far. They'll have them wiped out and be left with nothing to really recover with. They'll work off the draw, and that never usually goes well. So moving forward, L is going to respond with at least, I think, 1 Flamestorm, right? Yep, 1 Flamestorm to take out the Tarius files, kill off the rat, weakens everything else on the board here. Now, he can play the 2nd Flamestorm to clear off the rest of it, but he holds off for now, which is interesting. He plays a White Knight in the back and keeps it there. I understand probably he wants to utilize a couple of these Dragon Crest shields, or at least I think that's what he's going for here. We see Manny, of course, throw out the Armory to give everything else a buff, so maybe preparing for the worst here. He gives everything a buff to protect it. Just a little bit further here, we see a couple of range units moving around, the rat as well. But here's where we see a good play from L, and at least in my opinion, is a pretty good play here. 1 Dragon Crest Shield goes on the White Knight here, which gives him 2 armor, and of course, Flamestorm dealing 2 damage will take away this armor, but that can be regenerated, so not actually hurting the White Knight, meanwhile clearing off the entirety of this board, except for Armory. And then, of course, he's reinforcing with another Dragon Crest Shield, because he has the gold, and he can't really do anything else here. So now, every time this White Knight is hit, he'll get 2 cards on a, or at least he'll draw 2 cards, and he has to pretty much pray here that Manny doesn't have hard removal like Mercenary's Execution here, because that will completely throw off this push here. So how does Manny going to respond? He will throw out a Windfall Griffin, which isn't necessarily bad. He does buff it a little bit too, but not enough to really kill off the White Knight here. White Knight does technically have 210. Meanwhile, Griffin only has 8 attack. So again, can't really kill it, but I can imagine L is not going to go ahead and attack with White Knight. He wants to see if he can get some cards from the draw here. Unfortunately, though, not a solid draw here in the form of Luminaris. He does need to protect this castle. This thing is getting buffs, and of course, he does have flying. So if L were to leave it here, he would take some serious castle damage. However, drain life on the armory, at least he can do something for now. He can give that white knight a bit more health, and meanwhile decreasing the power of Runefall Griffin slightly. We see a wizard come out now from Manny, and again another trap. So, I mean, I don't really want to say. I mean, listen, I'm surprised to see a trap in Pirate Viking right about now. To completely honest with you guys. Normally, I would say that's got to be an avalanche. I don't see it being anything else. We'll see if he decides, or we'll see if it is an avalanche. We see a question knight in his hand, so will he summon it? He'll play Luminar first, snipe off that wizard, deal a little bit of damage to the Griffin, and also see the white knight. So it is not an avalanche. It is, I don't know what that could be, if I'm being honest here. Pirate Viking doesn't really have a lot of options in the realm of trap. You have things like special delivery, but that would have already activated. Maybe Might of the Minotaur probably is the only viable option I can really see. But I don't necessarily agree with playing traps in Pirate Vikings. I understand that you maybe want a couple of stat buffs on your units here, but I don't really know. It doesn't really seem right to me. But anyway, moving forward here, we'll continue on the matchup here and ignore me talking. Manny going to go ahead and respond with a blacksmith and pretty much end his turn there, I imagine. He's running low on cards. They both really don't have a lot of options to work with. Manny on 1 card. L on 3 now thanks to this upcoming draw here. So we'll see how he responds. White Knight going ahead and using the Luminaris to kill out the Blacksmith, dealing 4 damage to Castle, further weakening the Windfall Griffin here, and of course the Forbidden City. Now, here is probably the toughest part of this matchup to watch, in my opinion. So, L will go ahead. He gets a little bit too cocky here. Activates the trap card that is Might of the Minotaur, and there goes his White Knight, leaving his castle wide open to take 10 damage. Now, if Manny were to have a buff, that would be the end of the game. We'll see if he does, and then we'll kind of explain why he shouldn't have done what he did. There's a Ludicrous Strength here to end off the game. Storm Strike as well for good measure, just because I use the cards here, and that is the game. Now, kind of a quick mention here. That the White Knight, or no, not the White Knight. The Questing Knight play was ultimately the turning point in this matchup and how the game fell into Manny's favor. I understand that if you have the upper hand here, you want to kind of kill off the opponent's tools, you can do so. But at that point, if you're summoning the Question Knight, you got to think about what traps are on the board. And it's funny because I knew I just mentioned that, I don't recommend playing traps in Pirate Viking. But this is a rare moment where I guess the opponent must have completely blanked on the trap here. You got to always keep in mind what traps are on the board. Or at least the traps that are in the faction colors. Things like special delivery. Things like the Rot Tunnel. Might of the Minotaur. Avalanche. Those are kind of all the, or at least most of the traps in these colors. So when you think about that, when you first summon a unit, nothing happens, so it's not a special delivery or an avalanche. You gotta assume it's gotta be either the rat trap, the rat tunnel, I believe it's called, or it might have the Minotaur. Now I understand that you want to take out the Windfall Griffin. It was a big threat to your board, so you want to get rid of it and all that. But you gotta make sure that your unit has the ability to take it out, regardless of if it has the might buff or not. Question Knight did not, unfortunately, have enough power if that trap went off, which it did. So we saw that Question Knight easily fall. Personally, I just wouldn't have gone for the kill. I would have kept my Questing Knight back to defend the castle, so that way, even if that Windfall Griffin got a buff, nothing as serious as maybe a Lightning Blade could have touched the castle. We did see Storm Strike, but that would have only done 2 damage, whereas obviously the White Knight could have continued to chip away the castle for 4 damage. Now, we probably could have seen some more things later on in the matchup here. I think the Guardian was in L's hands, so even if something like that were to happen here, we could have gone a little more further. Dragon's Fire and a Guardian that would have dealt 6 damage. You would have kept the Knight chipping away at the castle. So there are some things to be, said about this matchup here. But overall, I'll just leave it be for now. Good match for both these two. A surprising victory, pretty much a complete turnaround out of nowhere victory, in my opinion. But anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and move into match number 3 and see what the final match has for us. Alright, and our final match will be Magic Thumb taking on Skyan. Hopefully I pronounced that one right. But anyway, it's going to be a Ninja Druid taking on a Warlock Viking. Now, it's interesting. A lot of you mentioned in my archetype tier list that you did want to see some kind of representation out of Ninja Druid. Personally, I haven't really seen them as a super strong deck, but maybe this match will change my mind. We'll see. But it's certainly something to at least take notice of. The fact that there seem to be a bunch more Ninja Druid decks going around lately, especially since the latest patch as well. They seem to have gotten a little bit of extra motivation, some extra invigoration, if you will. So, kind of a little interesting note to point out there. But anyway, I think he might be going up against some aggression here, at least some early aggro rush. We see a warrior coming out thanks to the addition of a gold, or at least a medallion. So yeah, I can definitely assume that this does have some sort of rush printed all over it. And we'll see Skyan, again, hopefully pronouncing this right, respond with a were-rat to meet that warrior head on. So pretty standard stuff there. We see a battle ready for magic. So again, a little bit of a stronger warrior there. Trades with the rat very well. Cleans up very nicely here. And we see Skyan. He's going to have to respond with a spiny if he doesn't want to take some early damage, which he does. Goes ahead and trades it just like that. And we move on back to Magic's turn. So again, very standard stuff here from, I guess, aggression, or at least some aggro. Things like that. Skyan not really showing a lot in his hand right now of what his deck is based around, but hopefully we'll learn more about that moving forward. We'll go ahead and continue that one. We see the Unholy Altar being played. We see Shadow Katana as well. Again, another Shadow Katana being drawn into his hand, which is interesting. Then again, we'll see some zombies begin to generate here. Blue Firebolt trading with that Flux. He's not really wanting to deal with it any further here. Which is completely fine. I can understand the threat that Flux poses to you, especially when you don't have a lot of solid ways to buff up these tokens right now to deal with that Flux. So, Blue Fireball, going to go ahead and sweep that right away. We see Fenrir back in his hand, so maybe some Fenrir shenanigans from Sky and maybe some Rampage stuff like that. We see two Shadow Katanas in his hand. But anyway, enough about that. Grotesque Offering on that zombie will draw Magic some additional cards here. Major Apprentice. And again, not being thrown too aggressively too, which is nice to see. If he were to play it in front of the castle, Stone Drake would have been able to kill off this zombie. Shaman takes out the Major Apprentice here. So good heads-up thinking by Magic on that play. Skyan going to respond with a Stone Dragon statue. Not really seeing a lot of other options that are going to be totally worth it right now. He doesn't want to reveal the Stone Drake just yet, since I feel like that might be its only option to get rid of the Major Apprentice. Shadow Drake being discovered, though, by the zombie. Major Apprentice going to head and be thrown out there. Fire Drake, excuse me. Go ahead, thrown to block the Major Apprentice here. But that is ultimately a dead Major Apprentice. We can see the Stone Drake in hand. That will trade very well with the Fire Drake. And, of course, Shaman will finish off that Major Apprentice. And, hell, even further, insult to injury here. We see the Alpha Strike on Stone Drake, giving it additional 2 attack and first strike. So, that Fire Drake not getting any ability to, I guess, respond, which is interesting. And that does leave Magic with quite a little tricky dilemma here. 2 damage onto that Stone Drake from a zombie. 2 more on the Shaman Warrior coming out now, getting a little Drain Life action as well on the Stone Drake. Warrior being buffed, Thunderstrike taking out both cards. That was a very smooth interaction or at least a very smooth turn, I should say, from Magic Thumb. Pretty much having everything go the way he wanted to, I think, in that moment, which is great to see. You'll love to see it. But it does leave Skyan here in a bit of a tricky position here. I think you can only really play the Horseman, which you will go ahead and do, which is fine. Takes out the Warrior. Although I guess it probably would have been better to hit another target and have the Warrior trade with Horseman. But, I mean, what else can you really do here? Horseman going to be thrown down to maybe throw a Centaur in the upcoming turn. Flame Prince moves back a little bit. Ninja Training will draw. Zombies move forward. Fire Drake comes back out. Another one anyway. Disintegrate on that Headless Horseman. So completely nullifying it from the board here. Back to Skyan. I feel like I keep saying Skyan because it's so easy to say. But anyway, Skyan throws out the Fenrir. Not really seeing much of a other option now. 2 Shadow Katanas down at the bottom there. He had the option to play it, but decides to hold off. I think that's really his trump cards, if you will. But there we go. Temple of the 5 Gods comes out. And now we can safely say that this is a Chain Explosion deck, which is very interesting to see. I haven't really seen a lot of those recently, so glad to see they're getting a bit of representation here. And that does mean Fire Drake becomes a bit more of a deadly threat here. Whatever it whatever it deals in explosion damage will be dealt as chain damage as well, or at least multiply the chain effect, if you will. So moving forward, I guess everything moves up. Yep, we go ahead. Flame Prince moves up as well. Gravestalker. Knowing that Skyan doesn't really have the chain to deal with this, he's going to go ahead and throw a lot more aggressive, or at least go a bit more aggressive now. Fenrir goes ahead and trades with one of those zombies. Centaur, excuse me, being thrown in. Chips away at that Unholy Altar, stopping the zombie production. Bestial Rage on the Centaur as well. So again, he's looking to do more with it. Takes out one of those zombies, again, keeps it alive thanks to the Bestial Rage buff. Ends his turn, and again, back to Magic, who I think it's pretty much got this in the bag here. Vampire goes ahead, kills off the Centaur. School of Magic coming out now, which is interesting. But again, it does work in sort of the chain explosion area here, and now we see more damage being dealt here. Again, more chain. And again, pretty much all these units now have just become viable chain threats to this board here. And we'll see. I mean, this is pretty much where the game ends here via a brutal interaction, or at least a pretty forced, brutal interaction here where he's got to pretty much make a decision. Does he want the opponent to kill him, or does he just want to go out on his own here? We see Fenrir going to go ahead and attack the Fire Drake, dealing 2 explosion damage and then 2 chain. Follow up with a Flame Prince, deals 1 explosion, 2 chain, and that ends the game here. So, a beautiful showcase of what Chain Explosion can do. Unfortunately for Skyan, I guess the cards weren't in his favor too much. I mean, Magic kept pretty much a lot of that matchup under control after that whole, after his Mage Apprentice died and that whole, like, Drain Life Warrior play kicked off. That's where we really saw the tide turn into Magic's favor. I felt like this was more of an aggression, or at least I thought in the beginning it was more of an aggro deck. Turns out I was wrong, and Chain Explosion picks up the win here. So a beautiful way to end off this edition of Cards TV with a win for Chain Explosion. Very well played match from both these two guys, and yeah, I think that's going to do it. With that being said, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of TV Commentary. Hope you guys did enjoy his commentary. Let me know if you guys saw the video by leaving a like if you enjoyed, sharing, and of course commenting down below your thoughts on today's matches. What did you guys think? Again, I want to hear your thoughts in that comment section and down below. With that being said, while you're done, if you haven't done so already, while you're down there, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps show your support to the channel by clicking that subscribe button at no additional cost to you. And with that being said, that's going to do it from me for now. So, until next time, guys, stay gaming.